This is the Ielts listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to part 1.
You will hear a woman calling an animal park to inquire about a job. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example which has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Bender's Animal Park, hello.
Oh, hello. I'm ringing to ask whether you have any jobs available.
What sort of work are you looking for? Is that permanent or part-time or...?
Actually, I'm just looking for temporary work. I'm a student.
Oh, right. I'll just get a form and ask you a few questions.
The woman says that she wants temporary work, so temporary has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Bender's Animal Park, hello.
Oh, hello. I'm ringing to ask whether you have any jobs available.
What sort of work are you looking for? Is that permanent or part-time or...?
Actually, I'm just looking for temporary work. I'm a student.
Oh, right. I'll just get a form and ask you a few questions. Then I'll pass your application on to our recruitment section. Is that okay?
Fine, thank you.
So, starting with your name.
It's Jane Lammerton.
Is that Lammerton?
There's only one M in it.
Oh, right. And your address?
It's 42 West Lane.
Right. And is that in Exeter?
Yes.
Okay. And can you give me your mobile phone number?
07792 430 921.
Right. Now, the next thing is, when are you available to start work?
I finish college on the 8th of June. That's in 3 weeks' time. But I can't start work till the 11th because I've got a hospital appointment on the 10th of June.
No problem. Now, I need to ask you a few questions about the type of job that might be suitable. Do you have any particular kind of work in mind? It doesn't necessarily mean that you will get work in the field that you want, but I can record your preferences.
Well, I'd do anything. And I have worked as an assistant animal keeper before, when I was still at school. But I'm studying at a catering college now, and I'd really like to get some experience as an assistant cook if possible.
Right. So that's your first choice. Have you done that kind of job before?
No, but I've helped my aunt sometimes. She runs a cafe in Exeter.
Would you say you've got any relevant skills then?
Well, I'm used to using the kind of equipment you usually find in a kitchen.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
OK. And I know you're still studying, but do you already have any qualifications related to that kind of work? A hygiene qualification, for example?
I haven't, no. But I've got a certificate in food handling. I did it before I decided to become a full-time student.
Fine. OK. That means you wouldn't need any specific training if you did get the kind of work you wanted. But you'd have to do a short course on first aid. All our new employees do that. It just takes half a day, and most people find it generally useful.
Oh, yes, I'm sure it is.
Well, that's about it, really. Oh, just one last thing. Can you give me the name of someone who would give you a reference, like a previous employer or...
Oh, yes. You can put Dr. Ruth Price.
OK. Is that one of your college lecturers?
She's my college tutor. She's known me for over 2 years, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind. In fact, she's given me a reference before.
Fine. We'd probably contact her by phone. Do you happen to know her number?
I've got it on my phone, yes. It's 0208 685 114. That's a landline.
Good. Well, as I say, I can't promise anything, but I'll pass your application on, and you should hear in a few days. Is there anything else?
Just one thing. I suffer from a particular type of colour blindness, and sometimes employers have to make special arrangements for that.
OK, I'll make a note of that. It won't be good that you've made us aware of it. You can provide us with more details if you're offered a job.
OK. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
You'll hear an introduction about canoeing. Now you have half a minute to read questions 11 to 20. Listen to the tape carefully and answer questions 11 to 20. Have you imagined paddling around on a river in a small boat? Canoes, which are narrow boats and usually hold 1 or 2 people at the most, are particularly well known for being unstable and turning over in the water. But more and more people enjoy this dangerous sport. Today, Cynthia Bocci, an adult education teacher and an addict of canoeing as well, will share her experience of canoeing with us. Cynthia, when did you begin this sport?
Well, I started it 6 or 7 years ago, and soon I got attracted by the exercise. I have to admit that it brings me great fun. It's become part of my life.
So, could you describe how you do it?
At first, I think you need some like-minded friends. The friends who share the same interest with you. It's no fun at all if you canoe alone. Usually, we assemble in a parking shelter near the Island Lake Recreation Area. We pull our canoes from inside the vans, lift them from atop the cars and trucks, and attach wheels to help transport them to the shores of the lake beside the boat dock.
What equipment do you need for the sport?
Well, first and foremost, a canoe, of course. The price ranges from £300 to £700, depending on the material they're made from. The more you can pay, the better, really. Personally, I wouldn't look at anything under £500. but that obviously depends on your budget. You also need a hard helmet to protect yourself against rocks when you fall out of the canoe, and believe me, that is very likely to happen. Because of this, it's a must for a beginner to wear a wetsuit. Oh, bathing suits don't work really. Sometimes a life jacket is a necessity in case you fall into water and no one else is nearby.
Maybe many can't understand your passion for the dangerous sport. Do you think it's all worth it?
Absolutely. I just love it. It's exciting, exhilarating, yet it's peaceful and it's calm. You can work as hard as you want to, or you can take it easy. In addition to having fun, canoeing offers a workout without realizing you're working out. Besides being a great exercise, which is good to heart and lungs, you gain strength and mobility. You build strength not only by paddling, but also from lifting and carrying your canoes. You can also exercise your mobility. Frankly, I never had upper body strength until I started canoeing. Now I can pick my canoe up and carry it on my shoulder with no problem. However, it's not just a workout of the upper body, but also a total body workout. If you're doing it correctly, it's a great calorie burner. And more important to me, paddling isn't strictly about exercise. It's as much about the peace and relaxation that comes from being out on the water. I saw it described on a brochure as liquid medicine for the soul, and that is so accurate. It allows you to take a mental break from your ordinary routine. It's a lot of fun and you meet a lot of great people. We connect on the waterways by responding to email invitations, posting on websites and club announcements. Also, it's a great way to get an up-close view of nature. You can sneak up on wildlife. I've been right next to ducks, deer, and all kinds of birds. You just get a different view than you can get on land. I especially enjoy camping by canoe. It's like backpacking without having to carry a pack on your back. You can put everything you need in the hatches of the canoe. Have you experienced this kind of camping? Well, whatever you say about this sport, it's never dull. I think on one level it's a serious activity and you can become a real champion, but it's a small group who take it that far. But for most, it's a fantastic sport for anyone who likes adventure.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. Now listen carefully to the interview and answer questions 21 to 30. Mrs. Kellerman, a specialist in child psychology, is interviewed by Bridget.
Mrs. Kellerman, why is it that some children perform much better than others at school? Obviously, it can't be denied that certain children are brighter than others, but it's not as simple as that. A lot of emphasis is placed on intelligence measured by tests, so-called IQ tests, which only measure certain types of intelligence, such as basically linguistic and numerical skills, or reading and mathematics to put it plainly, which is unfortunate because some children are bound to suffer. A good example was a friend of mine's son who was kept out of the top class at school because of his average IQ. That's around 100. His father, though he had no idea his son was going to be an architect, always said he was a clever child. Apparently, he was able to picture things in his mind and draw accurately at a very early age. The point is that his university life might not have been so difficult if his ability had been recognized sooner. What you're saying, then, is that Some children have abilities that are not easy to measure, that aren't appreciated by many schools. Precisely. And if these schools are not spotted sufficiently early, they cannot be developed. That's why, in my view, there are so many unhappy adults in the world. They are not doing the things they are best at. What are those other kinds of intelligence? How can we recognize them in our children? Well, take musical talent. Many children never get the chance to learn to play an instrument, but while they might not become great artists or composers, they may get a lot of pleasure and satisfaction. Musically gifted children are fascinated by all kinds of sounds, car horns, animal noises, and so on, and they can easily recognize tunes and sing them in key. How can a parent encourage them? Sing to them and teach them new songs. Buy a piano or even a cheap instrument such as a recorder. If you can afford it, send them to music lessons as soon as possible. Play recordings of different instruments to them. What about a child who is good at sport? Could that be described as a form of intelligence? Most certainly. We psychologists call it motor or bodily intelligence. These children move gracefully and handle objects skillfully. A child who finds it easy to take things apart and use various tools may well become an engineer with the right encouragement. We should give them models to make and take them to science museums. However, unless these children are also good with words and numbers, they will probably not do well in school examinations. Is there anything a parent can do to help in this case? Yes, it may be worth spending money on private lessons, but, hardly anyone is good at everything. In my opinion, a child should be judged on his individual talents. After all, being happy in life is putting your skills to good use, no matter what they are.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear Rebecca Bramwell, an artist and illustrator, giving advice on how to get your first job or commission as an artist. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 35. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 35.
I'd like to introduce Rebecca Bramwell, an artist and illustrator who has come along today to talk to you all about getting your first job or commission as an artist. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you for inviting me. I remember when I graduated back in 1983, I was very excited about getting my first commission. My degree was in fine art and I'd worked long and hard to get it. I was an enthusiastic student and I never found it difficult to find the incentive to paint. I think as a student you're pushed along by fellow students and tutors and the driving force is there. However, when you leave college, you find yourself saying things like, I'll have one more cup of coffee and then I'll sit down to work. I hate to admit it, but I say it myself. Suddenly, it isn't finding the inspiration or getting the right paper that's a problem. It's you. In my view, there are a number of reasons why this happens. It's a real challenge making a decent living as a new artist. You have to find a market for your work. Often you work freelance and need to take samples or portfolios of your work from place to place. These experiences are common to a lot of professional people. But artists also have to bare their souls to the world, in a way. More than anything, they want praise. If people don't like what they create, then it can be a very emotional and upsetting experience hearing them say this. I began to realise that these problems were preventing me from having a career in art, and so I decided to experiment. I was a painter, but I started to dabble in illustration, drawing pictures for books, cards, and this offered me the opportunity to become more emotionally detached from my work. I was no longer producing images from the heart, but developing images for a specified subject, taking a more practical approach. I began to develop a collection of my illustrations, which I put into a portfolio and started to carry around with me to show prospective clients and employers. But it was still tricky because publishers, for example, want to know that your drawings will reproduce well in a book. But without having had any work published, it's hard to prove this. Having a wonderful portfolio or a collection of original artwork is, of course, a first step. But what most potential clients would like to see is printed artwork, and without this evidence, they tend to hold back still when it comes to offering a contract.
Look at questions 36 to 40. Now answer questions 36 to 40.
Well, I overcame this problem in two ways. And I suppose this is my advice to you on preparing your portfolio of your best work. The first way was by submitting my work for a competition. And the one I chose was for a horoscope design and was sponsored by a top women's magazine. There are a few of these competitions each year, and they offer new illustrators an opportunity to showcase their work. The other approach I took was to design and print some mock-up pages of a book. In other words, I placed some of my illustrations next to some text in order to demonstrate how my work would look when it was printed. Perhaps I was lucky in that I had taken a degree that provided me with all-round creative skills so that I could vary my style and wasn't limited to a certain technique. Now, I think that is important. The art world and many other creative fields do try to pigeonhole people into snug boxes with an accompanying label. Now, I think you should try to resist this if you feel it happening to you. If you don't, you'll find it difficult to have new work accepted if you try to develop your style at a later stage in your career. Nevertheless, when you start out, and particularly when you're going for an interview, it's important not to confuse people by having a lot of different examples in your portfolio. One remedy for this is to separate your work into distinct categories. In my case, I did this by dividing my design-inspired illustrations from my paintings. It's then easier to analyse the market suited to each portfolio, such as magazines, book jackets, CD covers, etc. Working under two names is also useful, as it clarifies the different approaches and offers a distinction between them. I think it's been hard for artists to be recognised in anything other than the pigeonholes that they've been placed in. Luckily, these barriers are slowly being demolished. So I really do wish you all the very...
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.